Once upon a time in a faraway kingdom, there lived a wise and generous king named Aric. King Aric was beloved by his people, for he was known not only for his wisdom, but also for his kindness and compassion. His kingdom was prosperous with fertile lands, bountiful harvests, and peaceful towns. Under his rule, the people lived in harmony and contentment. King Aric had a grand palace that overlooked the entire kingdom. Despite his wealth and power, he was a humble man who believed in sharing his fortune with his subjects. Every day, he would open the palace gates and invite the poor, the sick, and the needy to come and receive food, clothing, and whatever else they required. The king found great joy in giving and took it upon himself to ensure that no one in his kingdom went hungry or suffered from want. One day, a wise old man from a distant land arrived at the palace gates. He had heard tales of the king's generosity and had come to witness it for himself. The old man, dressed in simple robes and carrying only a walking stick, asked to see the king. The guards, recognizing that he was a man of wisdom, immediately granted him entry. When the old man was brought before King Aric, he bowed respectfully and said, "Your Majesty, I have traveled far to see if the stories of your generosity are true. I have seen many rulers, but none as giving as you are said to be." King Aric smiled and replied, "You are welcome in my palace, wise one. It is my duty and my honor to care for my people. Whatever I have is theirs, and I find happiness in sharing my blessings." The old man nodded thoughtfully. "Your heart is indeed generous, Your Majesty. But tell me, do you believe that there is no limit to your generosity?" The king's smile faded slightly, and he considered the question carefully. "I do not know if there is a limit," he admitted. "But I give as much as I can to those in need." The old man then asked, "Would you give even if you had nothing left for yourself?" King Aric paused, thinking deeply. "If it meant that my people would be happy and cared for, then yes, I would give everything, even if it left me with nothing." The old man smiled kindly at the king's answer. "You are indeed a generous soul, King Aric. But true generosity is tested not when we have much to give, but when we have little." With that, the old man thanked the king and departed from the palace, leaving King Aric to ponder his words. Days passed, and a great drought struck the kingdom. The rivers dried up, the crops withered, and the once fertile lands became barren. The people grew desperate as their food supplies dwindled, and many began to go hungry. Despite the growing scarcity, King Aric continued to share what little the palace had with his people. Every day, more and more came to the palace gates, seeking the king's help, and every day, King Aric gave all that he could. As the drought persisted, the palace's storerooms emptied. Soon there was nothing left to give. The king himself went without food, giving his own meals to those who needed them more. His advisors urged him to stop, fearing that the king would weaken and that the kingdom would fall into ruin. But King Aric refused to turn anyone away. He said, "If I, as king, cannot care for my people in their time of need, then I am not fit to be their ruler. I would rather share in their suffering than see them suffer alone." Word of the king's unwavering generosity spread throughout the land, and people began to bring what little they had to share with one another. Those who still had food gave to those who had none. Those with shelter offered it to those without. The people of the kingdom, inspired by their king's selflessness, banded together to support one another through the difficult times. One evening, when the palace was almost entirely empty and the king was weak from hunger, the old man who had visited before returned. Once upon a time in a land far away, lived a wise and generous king named Aric. His kingdom was vast, with bustling towns, vibrant markets, and fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. The people of King Aric's land loved him dearly, for he ruled with kindness and fairness. However, one year a terrible drought struck the kingdom. The rivers dried up, the crops withered, and the once lush land turned to dust. King Aric did all he could to help his people. He opened the royal granaries, distributed food among the villagers, and even sold his treasures to buy supplies. Every day he walked through the villages, offering support and comfort to his subjects. One hot afternoon, an old man dressed in tattered clothes arrived at the palace. Despite his humble appearance, there was something special about him. He found King Aric sitting alone in the palace courtyard, staring out at the dry, cracked earth. "Your Majesty," the old man said softly, "I see that you have given all that you have, even in the face of great hardship." King Aric looked up and nodded. "My people are my responsibility. I would give everything I have to ensure their well-being, even if it means I have nothing left for myself." The old man smiled, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. "You have passed the true test of generosity, King Aric. You have shown that your heart is pure, and that your love for your people knows no bounds." With those words, the old man revealed his true identity. He was not an ordinary traveler, but a powerful and benevolent spirit sent by the gods to test the king's generosity. The spirit raised his hands, and as he did, the skies darkened with clouds. A gentle rain began to fall, soaking the parched earth and bringing life back to the land. The rivers flowed once more, the crops began to grow, and the drought was lifted. The people rejoiced, and King Aric's heart swelled with relief and happiness. The kingdom flourished again, and the spirit, before departing, blessed the king and his land, ensuring that it would remain prosperous for generations to come. From that day forward, King Aric was remembered not just as a wise ruler, but as the most generous king to ever live. His story was told and retold, a reminder of the power of selflessness and the deep bond between a ruler and his people. And the kingdom, guided by the spirit of generosity, remained a place of kindness, compassion, and abundance, just as King Aric had always wished. This story of the generous king teaches valuable lessons about the power of selflessness, the importance of caring for others, and the true meaning of generosity, even in the face of adversity. It's a heartwarming tale that highlights the strength of a giving heart and the rewards that come from helping those in need.